All right. So what is third party funding? Who knows what is third party funding? Any idea? Anybody who what is third party funding? What do you think is third party funding? Any clue? Okay. So very interesting, right? Normally, if you're, say I have a claim against you, okay, and I want to file a case in the court, who's going to pay for it normally? Obviously, I'll have to pay for it because I'm filing it, right? And you are defending your case. So it is expected that you will pay for your case, right? Who else is going to pay, right? The third party funding is where somebody else pays for it in a way. I mean, it's a simplification, but it is a place where you start understanding what the concept is, that the people who are parties to the case, other than there are two parties, as you, that there is a respondent and then there's a complainant, or there's a plaintiff and defendant and so on, right? Now these are the two parties, but there is a non-party who's paying to file the case, to fight the case. Okay, so what is that? That is third party funding. And why would they do that? Obviously because they are going to make profits from this, right? So imagine that I file a case against you and I'm going to get some damages because of let's say you have breached a contract or you violated my rights, and I file a case and I'm going to get paid damages, or something I'll get out of it, right? Now the third party funder who's giving me the money is going to take a percentage of that money, okay? Or maybe you take a fixed amount out of that. There is no necessity that it has to be a percentage. It could be a fixed amount out of that. But basically, if I lose, he doesn't get anything. But if I win, he gets paid. Third party funding is usually this. There is an alternative also. It could be that somebody is paying for it only as a loan, and later on the money has to be paid back whether one wins or loses. This is also possible, right? But I think that is rather rare. Most of the time, third party funding works in this way, that once you win the case, they get a part of your winnings, which could be significant sometimes, right? And this is a way of financing litigations, right? So litigations, arbitrations, claims can be financed this way. And this is a very big billion-dollar business in the US, in some other countries, but not so much in India. So any idea why it is not important in India so far? Do you guys have any idea? Can anybody take a wild guess why third party funding is very small? Why it doesn't exist in India, more or less? I mean, people are talking about it, people want it, and there is a possibility that it will come. But right now, it is almost non existent. There are some exceptional cases where third party funding has been done, but people are fearful, funders are fearful too. But why is that? Any idea about this? Anybody knows? Anybody wants to try answering that question in the chat? No, hands up, nobody. Government restriction. Somajyoti is saying. Akash is saying because Indian judiciary leads to delays and ROI is greater in other instruments. Okay, that's an interesting answer. That's an interesting answer, Akash. So actually what happened in that common law jurisdictions long time back, there was a restriction on this kind of financing of somebody else's litigation. Okay, why is that? There is something called maintenance and sham party. This is a tort. If you read a tort book carefully, then you'll come across these torts called maintenance and sham party. When I was in my first year in law school, I went and opened the book of law of torts, and then I wanted to know, okay, what all the different kind of torts exist. Okay, maintenance and sham party is not taught properly in India. Like it's not even there. Like in the, if you open a book of law of torts, Bangia or any other, I don't know what other books, I forgot the names, but if you open a textbook, there won't be even like maybe one page on maintenance and sham party, because it's really, really unusual that such a tort is being filed in India. But there was a time this was common. Okay, that was an important tort. Why? Because what used to happen is that some lord, okay, so lords used to have their rivalries, right? So instead, so they will have only, I mean, if you want to file a case, you have to have a cause of action against somebody, right? So if I have done something to you, you can file a case against me. But if I have done nothing to you, how can you file a case against me, right? But lords, because they were having rivalries in England, what they used to do is that they will find somebody who has a problem with me. Maybe they have somebody has an issue with me, and then pay that person to file a case against me, to file a suit against me, or any kind of cases. So this became a nuisance to the extent that they developed the law of maintenance and champerty. Basically, you're helping somebody else to maintain a suit against another person. Then it is maintenance, a tort of maintenance. Similarly, champerty is like, same thing. You are paying somebody and getting money out of it when they are filing cases. So basically, this was illegal, right? To finance somebody else's court case was illegal in common law jurisdiction, considered a tort for a long time. But the British changed their law. Okay, Americans have their specific law that allows in their civil code. Okay, and then they have in England also they have made reforms. They have passed laws that allows third-party funding. In fact, if you look at the massive number of class action suits, they are often funded by third-party funders, right? Class action suit will not be what it is today. It will not be such a big thing if it was not funded by third-party funders. It will be very hard to fund huge cases of class action suits where people only get paid later. So it's very hard, but third-party funders are ready to put the money upfront for all the legal expenses, so that they can get a chunk later on. They are even ready to take a risk on it to the extent, right? So third-party, you can understand why third-party funding is important, right? Class action suits and many other things. We'll come to that next. Okay, why third-party funding is becoming increasingly important in India. And of course, there are some judgments on this. You can read it. I don't want to go into it, but there have been a judgment of the Bombay High Court. And if you Google, you'll find all these things where they said that, a lawyer cannot pay for somebody's cases. They cannot finance the cases of a party. But if somebody else does it, it's okay. And they take a percentage also, it's okay. So there is a judgment like that. And there are some other judgments. Right now, in fact, third-party funding has come into question before judges, right? So in third-party funding of international commercial arbitration has been called into question. So cases have been filed against the enforcement of certain foreign arbitral awards, and that is being heard by Bombay High Court. The other case is very old. This is a new court, so they new case. So it will be seen that finally what stands the courts take, and I think we'll come to know in a year or two that whether India is going to allow third-party funding or not. It makes sense that third-party funding will be allowed. I'll tell you next why it makes a tremendous economic sense, and it will be really good for all lawyers, including you and me. For everyone, it will be tremendously beneficial. So I'm going to focus on that and explain on that rather than going into whether third-party funding is legal or not. Anyway, it's a gray question, okay? Gray area, so to speak, and courts will decide because it is before the courts to decide anyway. So why it may become important for post-COVID dispute practice in India, right? So basically what has happened since the pandemic is that there is a massive number of contractual breaches that have taken place. And at the same time, not too many cases are being filed, okay? Why do you think not too many cases are being filed? Can anybody guess? Pranav Sethi is asking what is the difference between pro bono work and third-party funding. See, pro bono work, you are not just you are not taking there is no transaction. You are just doing the work free of cost, right? That anybody can do. That is not funding the case. Funding the case will be when you are paying the client. That okay, I'm going to pay you whatever money is needed now. And when you win, and in pro bono, you're not getting anything at all. In this case, you're saying that, okay, when you win the case, Okay, in that I will have a I'll get a part of that as a compensation for doing all this work. That is not allowed. That is not allowed under the Advocates Act, specifically prohibited. That is why it is not allowed. Okay. These major status given. So maybe there aren't lots of suits. Another reason maybe online medium is not very comfortable. No, the real reason is that, see, anyway, people have little working capital, right? Most companies have less and less money to spend on litigation today, right? So they don't want to go, and even if they have a claim, let's say they have a claim against another company and they will get 1 crore out of it, but they are trying to get it in some other way, trying to convince the other party, writing emails, requesting them, begging them, whatever, right? But they are reluctant to go to the court for 2 reasons. One, they know is that the court will be very crowded right now. Even if you file a case today, it will be like, yeah, it's not an urgent case. We'll see when it happens. You stand in the queue, whatever. Even the appointment of arbitrators have slowed down to a great extent. People are not able to get arbitrators appointed. Okay. So that is one reason. Second reason is that, yeah, it is slow process, high expenses, all of that is true. Even arbitration, people are not going, even though arbitration can be quite a slow process, because people don't have the money to pursue. If they have some money, they want to use the money in their business as a working capital and not tied up in litigation. So they are saying, yeah, litigation बाद में देखेंगे. ठीक है? We have 3 years of limitation period in most cases. So they are saying वो बाद में 3 साल खत्म होने के पहले सोचेंगे, right? So people are not filing litigation, and it is actually impacting the bottom line, top line, everything of law firms, litigators. Everyone is suffering, right? It is kind of, unless it is a very urgent matter, nobody is filing litigation. People are avoiding litigation. They are trying other things if possible. Okay, so this is an issue, and litigators are suffering, the law firm industries are suffering, everybody is having a problem. Now, what is the way to get out of this, right? I'm not saying there is no work, I'm saying there is work, but still it is not growing, it is not as much as it used to be, and not growing. Okay, but if you want all the lawyers to have lots of work, then you need to an increase in litigation, right? So there are people having disputes, but they're not coming to court. This is like the worst situation for the lawyers. So the question is, what if someone can help you to fund your litigation, especially when your case seems to be very clearly on your side, right? You have a very good case, you have like clear cut, this thing. So a company will prefer that, do not take money from me right now, do not take my working capital and tie up in litigation, but somebody else funds it, and if they win, I'm ready to pay a percentage to that person. Basically, you are getting a finance to run this litigation, and in return you are ready to pay them a percentage. Okay, now this is a very good proposition for Indian companies also, because then they don't have to spend too much money on litigation, but at the same time they can pursue their claims, they can pursue justice. And this is also good for lawyers, because all these cases will then get filed, and they'll obviously, the finance is for what, mostly for lawyers' fees, maybe some court fees also, but it will definitely go into, a lot of it will go into the fees of the lawyer, right? So it is an excellent opportunity for lawyers. Like if third-party funding starts happening, it will change the fortune of litigators in this country. Same for law firms, everybody will benefit, right? So this is the background as to why you'll see right now a lot of law firms are talking about third-party funding. They are doing seminars on third-party funding. They are writing white papers on third-party funding. Why are they putting in so much effort on third-party funding? They are, having conferences with foreign third-party funders and discussing all of that. So they are trying to build a legacy, some kind of reputation related to third-party funding. Why? Because they know very well that third-party funding will be critical for their growth. For their dispute practice can triple, quadruple if third-party funding starts coming. And they are also recommending to their clients that you can start looking at third-party funding, especially for international commercial arbitration, especially if it is outside India. Eventually, it might be there for India also. General counsels are also looking at it, that can this be done? Definitely a very interesting trend. It can be done maybe in the near future, and the sense is that it should be done. Why should it not be done, right? It is beneficial for lawyers, it is beneficial for the client, it is beneficial for the companies who are like struggling anyway. So for the people who actually need it, they can take this money, and most of it probably will come in the front of in the form of FDI, foreign direct investment, because in India there are no third party funders as such to speak of, no large ones at least. But third party will happen, right? So it is a very good opportunity, and also in third party funding the return is very high. Okay, so maybe you have invested, maybe the claim size is 1 crore. Now the cost of litigation maybe is 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs. Okay, but you can say that, okay, if I win the case I will get 20 lakhs or 30, I'll get 20%, 30%, and the company will agree, because they, instead of paying out 10 lakhs right now, they'll be like, anyway the money is not coming, let it get third party litigation, let it happen. Money comes, then we'll get something. And it is high uncertainties also why companies really, instead of fighting it themselves, are ready to give it to third party funding. And third party funders have their good economic models, financial models, statistical models, through which they know which matters to finance and which matters to not finance. Just like startups are financed by venture capitalists, and they know that, okay, we'll back 10 startups, and maybe one startup will actually succeed out of that, or maybe 2-3 will succeed, and even the other fail, we don't mind, right? So they have some other kind of financial model will be there, that with the third party funder, because they're professionals, there will be money managers, there will be statisticians, mathematicians. They come up with models on how to do this right, just like insurance, right? So this is how third party funding works. Like third party funding depends on finding good cases to fund, which have a high chance of winning, and some of that will be lost also. But overall, in the because they are investing in different matters, in some matters they will make enough money for them to sustain and their existence be justified, right? So okay. So like I said, the share that they receive is normally contingent on the condition that the litigant has to win the claim wholly or partially. There are exceptions to this also, but it is rather rare. So tracing the history of TPF in India, common law system, these things we have discussed already, right? Interestingly, in 2018, there was a Supreme Court judgment which said there is no restriction on a TPF arrangement in the country. They were discussing on, it was probably obiter dicta, which is not a ratio decident as such, but like these things needs to be more clear. It's not that clear as it should be. Advocates Act restriction, I already said. Bar Council of India rules, standard of professional conduct and etiquette has some contrary stuff. But like I said, I think change is in the air as far as TPF is concerned. It's a matter of time, because government also is in favor. Foreign companies which are operating in India, they would also want this to happen. And there are people, we know that FDI can come into India for this, so and so on. So like the stars are aligned. Okay, now regulatory ducks have to also fall into line, but otherwise stars are aligned for TPF to work. So then what is stopping TPF from becoming mainstream in India? Right? This is an interesting question. So there are some moral hazards related to TPF, right? So moral hazards like, one second. So what are the moral hazards related to TPF, right? So one major moral hazard that exists is that, okay, if the funder is, is paying for all of this, then what are the decision-making rights of the funder, right? will he decide when the matter is to be compromised? So, settlements happen, right, a lot of time. So do the funder gets to call the shots on when the settlement is to be done or not? If the client is of the opinion that he wants to reject the settlement that is being offered by the other side, can the funder say no? And this will be obviously determined by the agreement that will be there in place, right? So there are other questions. Basically, for third-party funding, a certain kind of agreement will be drafted between the funder and the party which is taking the funding. So that will address some of these. But there are other questions also, like, who gets to choose the lawyer? Is it the party who chooses the lawyer, or the funder calls a shot that no, I want this lawyer only in this matter, or I want the strategy to be this, where the client might say no, I don't agree with your strategy, but the funder may say no, this is what it, if you want the funding, you have to follow my strategy, right? So there are such moral hazards related to third-party funding which are likely to arise, right, in course of time. And some jurisdictions are coming up with rules and laws or judgments related to that, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So ideally, India should be working on a law also that, laying down the, what is permissible, what is not permissible in terms of third-party funding. Otherwise, it will be determined by market practice, which is also not a bad thing. But market practice can take time to develop, and it can be complicated. Okay. So all that is here. Hi Nilesh Javkar is here. How are you doing, Nilesh? All right. So this was a brief about third-party funding. I would say that third-party funding is something that you guys should understand and read, and it's not something you can do right away in India. Okay, but it can be a game-changing factor for all of us. Like, when we should at least demand third-party funding, we should ask our bar councils and everyone, should write articles about it and lobby for third-party funding to become a reality in India. Because when that happens, it will be a game changer. I mean, it is legal. But there is no clear. So there are two kind of laws, right? One kind of legality is that nothing is banning it, so no problem. The other kind is that government makes a law and signals that we are open for this. Nobody will stop you, come to business here. So that has not happened. And I think, third-party funding is very critical for multiple things. Like class action suits is very important in India. Large environmental cases, large environmental class action suits are needed. So if the company is like polluting the groundwater, polluting air, polluting river water, people who are affected by this pollution should be able to file a case. But see, thousands of people are not going to come together and file a case, right? It is not realistic, especially poor people. A lot of them don't have the resources to do this. But if their third-party funding is allowed, then an enterprising lawyer or some entrepreneur will create a way to aggregate these people, file the case, and a third-party funder will pay for the case, all the expenses. Then the case can be fought properly with a proper, monetary resources, and then justice will be done, right? So for class action suits to, for example, take off in India, this will be very important. For environmental activism and environmental suits to go to the next level, because without compensation, it doesn't matter if courts pass some law saying don't do this, don't do that. Nobody actually cares unless they have to pay for it, right? So until that actually happens, you won't see a change. And it is very, very important that we start having third-party funding in India. There is no real legal barrier as such. Only thing that is needed is maybe government to proactively make some rules and laws related to this. And it will be such a boon for all the lawyers, especially the litigating lawyers. They'll start getting more work. So it will be great. MC Mehta rejoices in the background. Yeah, I don't know. I hope so. Great. Yeah, but it will be a big, big difference in terms of environmental activism, because you can actually go after. So, for example, if you want to prove that the groundwater has been contaminated by a certain company, you need a lot of research. You need to spend money on that. Who's going to pay for it, right? So, if third-party funding becomes legal, then evidence collection, everything will get covered by all of that. Like, there'll be real money. So big companies have a lot of money to fight these cases and produce, evidence in their favor, produce scientific evidence in their favor. But if you have proper third-party funding, then there will be funding to catch them and make them pay for it, and there will be proper legal firepower on one side, which is not there right now. It will make a huge difference. So this is why I think I'm a big fan of third-party funding, and I believe that it is very much needed in India. But obviously, our previous generations haven't thought so much about it, I think, and they haven't really pursued it because third-party funding is mainstream in all advanced economies. In India, however, we are still talking about it is legal, illegal, what is it, and if you even use it, then the other party will file a case against you saying, look, this is illegal, this is public policy of India. It's a big problem. Okay. So hopefully there will be change. Okay, so any questions at this point, or you guys are sorted? Like if there is any question, I'm happy to answer. Okay, there's a question being posted here. Let me check. Third-party funding of litigations in M&A transaction. What are your thoughts on this? Third-party funding in M&A transaction litigation happens shareholder disputes, right? So most of the time, let's say you have sold, you promise to buy a company and then you back out after signing the agreement, or you are breaching the shareholder agreement, or you are breaching the share purchase agreement, share subscription agreement, business transfer agreement. You breach an agreement that is in place. So third-party funding can happen, but third-party funders are looking for very short cases. It can happen, but like definitely. Ideally, they are looking for cases where there is a large payout at the end of it. But it can happen. Like, if it is a shareholder dispute, will there be a big damages? Not always. A lot of times shareholder disputes are being fought for control of the company, or control of some shares, control of some board seats, and so on. Or so funding is possible. It is not impossible, but then that getting a percentage of the recovered amount and so on, that becomes harder. Where we will see a lot of areas where we can see a lot of third-party funding would be money recovery, right? So banking finance, maybe that can be a big help for the banking finance kind of scenario, because banks anyway don't have capital, and then it becomes non-performing asset. They're already stressed. Now you're asking them to spend more money recovering that money. NBFCs will be very happy if this happens. Big boon for them. But other than that, there would be like import-export people. So a lot of times their bills are not getting paid, or let's say a bill of loading or something not being honored, or there are a lot of things. Sometimes the bank guarantees don't get honored and bounce. A lot of weird things happen in import-export business. But other than that, it's mostly like supply agreements, construction agreements. These will have a big impact because you have a claim because of a construction was delayed, or the quality of construction was not up to the mark, and you have suffered losses. You can file that. I mean, those will be a larger number of cases, or that will be filed, I think. Or maybe a certain shipment was due and it was delayed, because of which you suffered losses. You will be, those kind of matters will be higher. Commerce related matter, commerce and trading related matters will be much higher. And large, the larger the better, like big projects, big project finance, big construction contracts. Those are likely to see the use of, they'll be the first where we'll see more and more third-party funding. But over time, what we may see is that as the bigger matters and more lucrative matters are taken away already by some funders, other funders may actually come down the chain and start funding smaller and smaller matters. And there may be some smaller funders who doesn't have the money to finance big matters. They might start funding smaller matters, but it will depend on how those funders are performing. Are they being able to give a return to their investors and so on? That will really matter. And the other fear is that if third-party funding actually becomes viable in India and people start doing, then how sustainable it will be. Like, will people get will the funders be able to give a return to investors quick enough, given that litigation can be delayed in India, or can be kind of infinitely protracted and stuff like that. So that won't work. We need fast court systems, certainty of legal system, the more certain, the better for these kind of things. And that'll help. That helps the entire economy, and it will definitely help third-party funding. Okay, so bunch of new questions are there. With regard to habit webinar, could you suggest some habits you feel are necessary to excel as a law student these days? That the entire webinar was about that only. Please go and see that webinar. Today's topic is different. And it is, I think it will be put up on YouTube eventually. So you can check it there. Are there any self-help book recommendations you'd like to share? No. Like ask me about third-party funding. Okay, not today. Today is our third-party funding. We'll talk about that topic another time. Okay, next question. Third-party funding takes place in criminal offences or like in defamation cases where there are demanded damages in millions. Recently, Arnab Goswami asked for 200 crore defamation suit. So if third-party funding is there in these cases, there is a lot of money to be made in these cases. Yeah. In reality, we don't see third-party funding in criminal cases at all because there is no money to be made at the end. You are either going to jail or not. In case of defamation cases, it is possible, but most of the defamation cases, although people are claiming these things, in the end, they don't get so much of damages. This is just like making noise. Okay. So it's not real that they are actually going to get 200 crore or even 100 crore, or even 10 crore of compensation. I have never heard. I've heard these cases getting filed, but never heard of them being actually getting paid this much for defamation. I'm sure you also haven't heard. So very bad cases to get funded, mostly. These are settled out of court, or settled in the court. The one issues an apology, the other says, okay. Usually this is what happens in most cases. But I haven't really heard in any case hundreds of crores or even 1 crore of, damages have been paid anyway. Rakhi Banerjee, doctors get themselves insured and expenses of medical negligence cases are borne by insurance company. Is the same conception. You can say so. Yeah, this is not insurance because insurance is before a problem has arisen, right? Even before a dispute has arisen. In this case, after the dispute has arisen, and mostly funding is received by people who are not defending, people who are suing to receive money. So that is the difference. Do I need to post my questions in a Q&A section? I posted in chat section. Yeah, wherever you post, it's okay. I'm answering from everywhere. All right, great. So I have answered all the questions, it seems. If there are no more questions, I thank you for joining this session and taking out time for this. Hopefully, all of you will continue your curiosity about third-party funding and continue to track the developments on this. And hopefully you will write some articles, make some videos, make some noise about third-party funding, because we need to educate more and more lawyers about third-party funding and how it is beneficial for them. Because if all the lawyers start demanding third-party funding, and then there is no way it will not happen, right? So I think that's the most important message. All of you should learn about it and should talk about it. All right, thank you, Akash. Any feedback for this session? How much will you rate this session out of 0 being pathetic and 10 being absolutely fantastic? How much will you give? Nilesh Javkar wants to speak. I've allowed you to speak, Nilesh Javkar. You can speak in the message. You can speak. You can unmute yourself and speak. Nilesh, you want to ask anything? You are permitted you to talk. If you want to talk, you can talk. Okay. All right. Nilesh isn't saying anything. All right. Nilesh has put up his hand, so I thought he might be wanting to say something, but he's not saying anything. All right. Great.
Hello.
Yeah, Nilesh, you are audible. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to know what will be the sources of funding to these third-party funders. if a third party fund wants to fund these litigations, from where they can bring in their sources?
Correct. So they bring in money from other, HNIs can invest in it. Okay, there are common people who sometimes also invest in it. There are private equity funds, hedge funds. This is an asset class, right? This is, if you allow this to happen, then it just becomes an asset class. And then it is considered a good asset class because there is a high chance of winning. And when you win, you can have very high returns on this. So because of all these reasons, it's considered a pretty high, very good asset class, but there is not enough of it. There are only few of it. It is kind of, I would say, scarce resource, right? It's not abundant, it's not unlimited. So in reality, there are a lot of people who are investing in share market, people who are investing in startups, people who are investing in private equity and all of that. So even those people are willing to invest. There are sovereign funds. So many people are willing to give money for such large matters. I mean, it is not there in India, so you have nobody doing it right now. But of course, it can change. Okay. Hope that answers your questions. Great. If there are no more questions, thank you, everyone. I have a humble request. You guys can share what you learned from today's session on social media, okay, Twitter and LinkedIn. Oh, I'm going to share my Twitter profile as usual. Just a moment. And do connect with me on Twitter so that we can be in touch. And if you have any more questions, you have some requests for certain sessions, you can share your requests there. Just a moment. Here you go. Here is the link of my Twitter, this thing. And definitely follow us, LawSikho, on YouTube, on LawSikho's YouTube channel. Okay. And I'm a first year, I don't have LinkedIn yet, sir. No, Twitter, go open LinkedIn. No, what is the problem? Just simply open a LinkedIn profile and post there. No harm, right? Okay. What will happen? Like, you just open a LinkedIn profile, add people. It is good for you. If you haven't opened it, start high time, you open a LinkedIn profile. Okay. Great. So hope to connect with all of you on Twitter if you're not already there. If you're already connected with me on Twitter, that's great. Otherwise, definitely join me on Twitter. Right. Look me up, Ramanuj Mukherjee on Twitter. And you can look me up on LinkedIn also and follow me there. Although in LinkedIn, I'll not be able to add you back. But if you follow me on Twitter and I don't follow you back, just send me a message saying that you attended this session and please follow me back. I'll follow you back. Okay. There are some questions that have been posted, I think. How to tag LawSikho via Twitter as you requested. You tag me, you tag LawSikho. It's just LawSikho. You just look for LawSikho, like @LawSikho, @Ramanuj. I'm Law Ninja on Twitter. So you can do @law_ninja and you'll find me on Twitter. But even if you search with people's names, you can find people on Twitter like that as well. All right, great. So anyway, I have shared my link with you on Twitter. So if you're connected, you can do that. And do tell people about these sessions from 9 to 10 p.m. usually every weekday. I do these sessions, and I have been doing this since 1st of September every single day. And I have done many sessions. I'll continue to do these sessions. So you can even suggest new topics that you want me to cover. You can do so on Twitter or on LinkedIn also. So looking forward to staying in touch with all of you. All the best. Have a great night. Take care.
Hello.